New Cardi Kaizoku video. Need to watch.
Hi, Anata.
Cardi Kaizoku.
This video is sponsored by gumgum.gg. Discover the latest OP10 deck lists on gumgum.gg, updated daily. Be the first to see decks for new leaders as they emerge. With over 1000 deck lists per set, gumgum.gg has all the top strategies as soon as they drop. This video is sponsored by Card Market, Europe's largest online marketplace for trading card games. So I made a One Piece card game event calendar app. So if this is something that you would find useful, you can access it via eventcalendar.cardkaizoku.com. I'll have the link on screen and in the description below. I made this for everyone's convenience, so hope you find it useful. So OP10 is releasing in a month, so it is pre-release season again. So OP10's pre-release event is an event where you can go and try out the cards before the set releases. So it's usually like a week before. Let's just take a look at the details of the event and then we'll go over the set itself, what cards you should look out for at your pre-release to hopefully get a prize winner card for you to take home. So they're going to be happening between the periods of March 14th and the 20th, with the set releasing on the 21st. So yeah, basically a week before. Anyone who buys a booster box during that event period at your local game store will receive one additional release event pack. This may vary. I honestly feel like every store event I went to for pre-releases didn't give me this pack. So I don't know, maybe just the stores around me are like cheating me out of my extra release event pack, but stores can choose between one of these two formats, constructed or sealed. So constructed is just like a normal tournament where you bring a deck that you crafted yourself to play with, but then you don't get to use any of the new cards, right? It's going to be OP10 and prior. Sealed is what most people are interested in because that lets you use the new cards early. So in a sealed format, you'll get 6 booster packs and then you'll get that release event pack as well. And you'll get like a promo card. And then with all these cards that they give you, you have to make a 40 card deck, not 50, right? 10 less. And then you can use any leader. You can bring your own Dawn as well. You can even use any OP10 leaders you pull from your packs. And then there's no color restrictions for the deck. So no matter what color your leader is, you can use any card that you get in your 6 packs. And no quantity restrictions either. If you somehow get like more than 4 copies of a single card, you can use it in your deck. And that's pretty much the rules for sealed. So let's see what cards that they'll give you for participation. And again, you can include these in your deck. So we get the shoe buggy, right? This is a buggy card that the buggy deck is sorely missing at the moment. It is a great card for the deck to just cheat out another body. But of course, in a sealed environment, you're not gonna most likely not run buggy because this will be like your only cross-skilled type character you can get. So this is probably just a garbage card for the sake of sealed, but welcome card for any buggy deck builders out there. We're also going to get the errata red purple law. I honestly thought we already had this, but I guess they never gave these out. But yeah, this leader is trash. You're probably not going to run this for sealed. We'll go over the leaders that you should run after this section here. You also get this release event pack, which will contain a bunch of like random commons and uncommons from the set with like a stamp on it. You'll get 2 cards per pack, so you'll get to be able to use these 2 cards. Hopefully it's like a 2k counter or a blocker. And then yeah, what you're playing for is the pre-release event winner buggy, which is, I guess, yeah, a card that some people want, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, the winner cards are always kind of whack, whatever card they choose for the set. And yet the applications for this pre-release event go live on February 28th. And I think that's all the information that we can get from the official event page. So let's jump right into looking at OP10 cards themselves. So I'll be using my deck builder tool here just to show off OP10, and I can filter it in many cool different ways. Yeah, OP10 leaders. Let's just take a look at the leaders and see maybe if any of these are worth running. And then we'll look at past leaders that were strong in past pre-release events so that you have a good idea of what you want to bring to a pre-release event. So we'll start off with the first leader here is Smoker. Red-green Smoker is a dual color for life leader. And then on your opponent's turn, your characters with the Navy or Punk Hazard type get plus 1k power. Activate main once per turn. You can set 2 of your Dawn as active if you have a 7k power or more character on board. So to be honest, Red Green Smoker I think actually would be pretty good in the sealed environment. It's just how good is it compared to the past leaders? In a vacuum, Red Green Smoker does sound great. You get an extra 1k power to your characters if you're running a lot of Navy and Punk Hazard type characters. There's quite a few good ones in the set too, right? That just makes it harder for your opponent to attack into. It's like a free 1k counter you have on all your Punk Hazard type characters or Navy. And then the second part of their effect where you can just get 2 Dawn back. That's also really useful in a sealed environment, right? Because you're not playing like the most highly synergistic and most combo heavy decks. Those 2 Dawn really add up, and if you have access to it every turn that you have a 7k out, it really does add up and helps you reach magic numbers, right? In a format where there's so little counter, being able to swing 2k over something means that your opponent will need 2 cards to defend it. So you can see how that can be really tricky for your opponent to have to deal with. Only downside is that Smoker is a 4-life leader, which makes it a lot easier for you to just lose if you happen to not be able to deal with your opponent's aggression. But definitely, I think Red Green Smoker could be a valid choice actually, right? Completely viable. Next up is Red Blue Caesar Clown, another dual color leader. So Dawn ×2 when attacking, you may return one of your Punk Hazard type characters with the cost of 2 or more to the owner's hand. KO to one of your opponent's characters with the power of 4,000 or less. So yeah, it's removal baked into a leader ability, but it's very restrictive because you do have to run Punk Hazard type characters. From your 6 packs, you're not going to have 0 Punk Hazard type characters, but it's kind of hard to guarantee enough to use this effect reliably. Right, you could just get unlucky and you might get like only a handful of Punk Hazard type characters. And on top of that, you need power reduction to utilize this ability. Right, your opponent's characters have to be 4,000 power or less. A lot of the good power reducer effects are locked into like past set, so it might be a little rough for you to play Caesar Clown if it was a OP10 sealed environment. So I'm gonna have to not recommend Caesar Clown. I don't think he'll be too viable. He has a leader ability that could be really good in sealed, but just the rest of the set itself doesn't lend to really benefiting this leader. There's also Sugar, a red-purple leader, also dual color for life. So end of your turn, if you have a character with the Don Quixote Pirates type with the power of 6,000 or more, set up to one of your Dawn is active. Then on your opponent's turn, once per turn, when you activate an event, set up to one of your Dawn from your Dawn deck is active. So yeah, it does kind of force you to run Don Quixote Pirates type characters if you want value out of your leader ability. And then also a lot of events too. But yeah, the thing is, there's only a couple events and only a couple good Don Quixote Pirates characters in this set. You do need like a mix of past set support for Sugar to work. So I would have to also not recommend Sugar either. There's also Green Yellow Law, also dual color. So Dawn ×1, activate once per turn. If the total cost of your characters is 5 or more, you can return one of your characters to the hand and then reveal the top card of your life. If that card is a Supernova type character with the cost of 5 or less, you can play it out. I also cannot recommend this leader because there's a lot of strong Supernovas tied to past sets, right? You kind of need 5-cost Law for this deck to even stay like defensive enough to not die. Just by nature of your leader effect, you're taking life. And there's only one way for you to heal. It's a secret rare that you may not even get in any of your 6 packs. It's like a rare card to get. And that's like the only source of heal you have with this deck without depending on past cards. So basically kind of everything's going against you, right? You're a 4-life leader, so you're like more vulnerable right off the rip. Then your leader ability encourages you to take life, so you're just getting even more vulnerable. So yeah, I would not recommend Green Yellow Law. Even though there's some good Supernovas in this set, I just think he can't survive in a sealed environment just due to the nature of how his leader ability works. Then there's Blue Black Usopp, yeah, yet another dual color leader. Don't worry, there's one monocolor, we're going to go over it next. But what Usopp does is your cost 2 or greater Dressrosa type characters have +1 cost. And then on your opponent's turn, once per turn, this effect may be activated when one of your Dressrosa type characters are removed from the field by your opponent's effects or are KO'd. If you have 5 or less cards in your hand, draw 1 card. So yeah, it is a pretty good value, positive leader ability, right? Not only are you making your characters harder to remove via cost, you're also like drawing a card when your Dressrosa type characters die. Now, again, this is type locked, so you do have to hope you get a lot of good Dressrosa type characters in your packs. There are quite a few good ones in this set, but they're all kind of offensive cards. A lot of your defense is locked behind like OP04 Dressrosa type cards, right? Your both Bartolomeo and Ideo blockers, you won't have access to those. So it might be a little awkward playing this leader with just OP10. Honestly, it could be viable, but it really just depends on your packs. If you pull like all your Cavendishes, your Zoros, your Kairoses, and your Rebecca's, and your Leos, right? You need all of those. Oh, but one big thing is you don't have access to Stage, right? Corrida Coliseum is not an OP10 card. So that kind of messes with some of your synergies, right? With your Leo and your Zoros in particular. But yeah, Usopp does allow you to play that 7-cost Rebecca. So I would say if you happen to pull a lot of Rebecca's and Kairos, Usopp, yeah, would be a good choice, but I'm pretty sure like for 80 or 90% of people from the luck of their packs, Usopp may not be too viable, so I might have to not recommend him either. And lastly, we have Piss Kid, our only monocolor leader in yellow, 5 life. So end of your turn, you may turn the top card of your life face up, set up to one of your 3 to 8 cost characters with the Supernova type is active, and that character gains blocker until the end of your opponent's next turn. So blocker is really good in a sealed environment actually, and the fact that you can untap your character too means that you can protect it from being attacked into. So it's like twofold in benefit, right? A blocker when you need to protect your life, or you can just untap your character to protect it from being attacked by any other characters. Because yeah, most of the threat of your characters in a sealed environment is from combat, So just being able to deny that from your opponent is really strong. It is type locked to Supernova, so again, it depends on your packs. If you get a lot of the good ones, Kid would definitely be a choice I would consider. And then since we're not color locked in the sealed environment, you do have access to like the blue and green Supernovas. I think there's like 1 or 2. So yeah, keep that in mind too when you check your cards. And then yeah, in the Supernova type in this set, we have late game, access to late game. But again, those are like your SRs and your secret rares too. So there's a chance you might not get it. So yeah, really just check your packs. If it makes sense to run Kid, I would run Kid. But if not, there's more generic pass leaders, or even Smoker was pretty generic too. I'd rather run those leaders instead. So all in all, Red Green Smoker would be my recommendation if you want to run an OP10 leader. If you're like forced to run an OP10 leader too, some events do that. But we'll take a look at past leaders that were strong in pre-release events. So I don't think I can recommend Zoro anymore. I think the meta has gone way past where Zoro could be strong in a pre-release event. The ones that people run nowadays, yeah, not even Katakuri feels like it's good in sealed anymore. So at the moment, I think it's 3 leaders in particular. So it's Bonnie, right? Bonnie from OP07. Her leader ability lets you, on your opponent's attack, pay 1 Dawn and just rest one of their characters or leaders. So it outright denies 1 attack for 1 Dawn. And you're a 5 life leader too, so you have that extra breathing room. So just being able to stall is really good. The other one being Surger Deck 2 Kid. He's always been a good pre-release leader in a sealed environment because what his leader ability does is when you activate main once per turn, if you pay 3 Dawn, trash a card, you can untap your leader so you can attack twice. This can be like a double 12k swing to go for game in the very late stages of the game. So just because you have that pressure always available, as long as you have cards in hand, means that your opponent is never safe at 1 life, right? They need to have enough counter to protect against 2 12ks. And then the third most reliable pre-release sealed leader is PRB01 Sanji. I don't have him in my tool. I'll add him after this, but yeah, I just have the image up here. So he's also a monocolor leader, 5 life, activate main once per turn. Up to one of your cost 8 or lower characters without an on-play effect gains Rush until the end of your turn. So Rush is also really strong in sealed, right? You're able to throw out an attack before your opponent can deal with it. You don't have to wait a turn for your characters to attack. And then whatever characters you have left on your board can also attack, so it just really adds up. And yeah, just this much aggression is just really hard for your opponent to deal with in a format with such little amount of defense. And then there's a lot of cards that don't have on-plays in the set too, so like all your vanillas actually become really potent, right? A lot of strong rush cards in the past were rush cards with no counter with vanilla stat line. Sanji makes any vanilla with counter into that kind of card. So honestly, it's like Sanji, Bonnie, or Kid for past leaders that you want to bring. And then I would suggest Red Green Smoker if you want to try something new. Alright, now let's take a look at OP10 itself and what cards you might want to look out for to include in your sealed deck. Again, we're having to fill a 40 card deck with 6 packs, so it's a little bit more about what not to include, but if you get some of these high impact cards, it might give you the edge over your opponent. So first off, you want to run all the 2k counters that you can get. Here are all the 2k counters for the set. Right, there's 2 red, 3 green, 2 blue, 3 purple, 1 black, and 2 yellow. If you get any of these, you're golden. Some better than others, like this Chopper here. He's a blocker, but also a 2k counter. He fulfills both roles. And then in a Smoker deck in particular, he's especially good. Well, even in any deck, to be honest. Because on your opponent's turn, he gets plus 2k power. So he's a 4 cost 6k blocker. That's a 2k counter. Yeah, he doesn't get the plus 2k buff on your turn, but you're not going to attack with him anyway, right? He's great for every other defensive utility that we need out of him. And then especially in a Smoker deck where we get plus 1k power to our Punk Hazard type characters on your opponent's turn, he's a 4 cost 7k blocker actually, so it's really, really good if you're running Smoker. If you happen to pull like, I don't know, like 5 copies or 6 copies of Chopper, because it's a rare, you can potentially get it in every pack. I would definitely consider Smoker, who can benefit the most from this card. Mocha is not too bad either. Giving minus 1k to something is a way to make it easier to kill, but I think I'd rather use it as a 2k counter. Tashigi could be interesting because it can protect one of your other green characters. Because if another green character were to be removed by your opponent's effect, you can rest Tashigi to save it. But this is more for like an ACOS Kid playstyle, and ACOS Kid's an OP01 card, so most likely it'll just be a 2k counter for you. Sabo, similarly to Tashigi, can be used to save another character. Sabo's more usable, I would say. Because not only is he a 4 cost 5k, that means he can attack on his own without any further Dawn investment. He's also a 2k counter as we mentioned. And then if one of your characters other than Sabo with an original cost of 7 or lower would be removed from the board by your opponent's effects, you can return Sabo back to your hand and save that character. So yeah, you're saving a character, you're returning him back to hand. Yeah, you don't get to attack with Sabo again, but he's a 2k counter, so he's fine to be just in your hand again. X-Trick is also pretty good, right? So if you play him out and then you activate main, you can rest this character. If the number of your life cards is less than your opponent's, you can rest one of your opponent's 4 cost or less characters. So this could be a way to rest their chump blockers to go for game. And this is especially synergistic in a yellow Kid deck because you could after resting the X-Drake, reveal the top card of your life, and then untap him and make him a blocker. So he's never a useless card in a Piss Kid deck. So basically you want to run all of these if you can, and then on top of this you want to run blockers. Right? Blockers make math for your opponent really inefficient. Any attack at a character that could potentially would have costed you like 2 cards to counter out of, right? If you needed 3k to stop something, you can now just stop it with 1 card that you played out earlier. So the blockers for the set, there's Scotch. Scotch is just a 2 cost 1k blocker. He does have an additional on play where it lets you play out a rock character, but on its own, just as a blocker for 2 cost that has even counter, it's a great card to include in your deck. We mentioned the Chopper in the 2k counter section, but this is also a great blocker because it's a 4 cost 6k blocker. Any of your opponent's naked 5k swings can be blocked for free with this Chopper. Dragon number 13, also great, being cheap. Barto's a pretty significantly big blocker, right? He stops the free leader hits. Bion is a conditional 1 cost blocker. Marco could be interesting. He's a blocker and an attacking stat line character. And then on KO, he also removes one of your opponent's characters on the board, right? It bounces a 4 cost back, so could be good as like a way to slow down your opponent in the early stages of the game. Replicate Soldier is a cheap jump blocker you can run. This card here is supposed to be Trouble. I think I copied the images wrong or something, so I'll bring it up on a separate tab. So Trouble is just a 4 cost 5k blocker. That's about it. So not worth going over any further with that. Frankie's a good blocker too. He's a 4 cost 5k, so he can attack, and then on KO he can play a 3 cost or less Dressrosa type character from your trash as rested. So you could get another character out that could soak up another one of your opponent's attacks, or could be an attacker that you can use to go over game the next turn if you need like 2 attacks to finish your opponent or something. And the Supernova blockers are pretty conditional. But one thing I want to note with the OP10 Yellow Kid leader ability is that he can turn any Supernova into a blocker. So in actuality, in his deck, every card in your deck can be a blocker if it's a Supernova type character. So if you want the most amount of blockers, you would run this leader, I guess. So first off, this Sanji is pretty nice. It's a 3 cost 3k power, but on your turn, it's a 6k power character actually. So being able to swing 6k for 3, it is a really efficient use of your Dawn. And then even when Sanji dies, you replace itself by drawing a card. Right, you're up in card advantage. That's never a bad thing in sealed. Yeah, only downside is on your opponent's turn, Sanji goes back to being a 3k at body, so it's really easy for your opponent just to attack 5k into him and he just dies. But yeah, since he replaces himself with the card, it's like a thing you play on your 3 down turn anyway, where you have nothing else to play. So yeah, it's perfectly fine to fit this in. It'll at least burn a 2k from your opponent's hand. You could also consider Caesar Clown, 7 cost 7k power. On play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 1 Smiley and put it into your hand. And then you can play that Smiley out. There's only 1 Smiley in the set, so if you happen to get it along with that Caesar Clown character, it's perfect combo, right? It's 7 Dawn for 2 characters. And Smiley is also great too, if you're running a Punk Hazard type leader. So in this case, most likely Red Green Smoker. So on play, if your leader has a Punk Hazard type, give it to one of your opponent's characters minus 3k power for the turn. Minus 2k power is like a death sentence to anything that you give it to, right? It basically tags it for death. Minus 3k is higher than the magic 2k number, so they'll need like 2 to 3 cards to even like get out of this minus 3k buff. And on top of that, you develop the 7k and then a 6k attacker, right? And to be honest, even without Caesar Clown, if you are running Red Green Smoker, Smiley might be worth it in sealed, just playing him out for 5. And if you are running Red Green Smoker, if you have choppers, it's a must run in your deck. And then you have the vanillas in Nami and Frankie here. 5 cost 7k, 6 cost 8k. These are worth running in your deck if you need filler. Kamakura Jusoshi would be good too. It's a really defensive event. For 2 Dawn, you can protect up to 5k worth the stats with it actually. The norm with the 2 Dawn event counter is usually 4k with the stats. But yeah, the nice thing about this is you can kind of split the effect. You can plus 3k to something to save it and then minus 2k to another future attack threat. So you can prevent 2 attacks technically with it. But if your opponent throws 1 big attack at you, you can target both the character or leader that you're saving and the attacker to make it 5k in total of damage mitigation here. Divine Departure is good too. On main, you can rest 5 Dawn and KO to one of your opponent's 8k power or less characters. So it's 6 Dawn to KO and 8k power. Most characters in the set are 8k or less, so this kills anything for 6 Dawn. Then defensively, you can also use it as counter for 1 Dawn to counter 3k. This is only actually usable on your leader. The card image I have on screen here is outdated. It's mistranslated, so do keep that in mind. As far as green cards go, Isho could be nice if you're running Red Green Smoker, because if you have a Navy type leader, you can rest 2 of your opponent's 5 cost or lower characters. This allows you to attack into them to potentially starve them. Edward Newgate would be pretty interesting too, 5 cost 6k. On play, if you have 2 or more rested characters, you can rest one of your opponent's 5 costs and then KO one of the rested 3 cost or less characters. So if you need to get rid of a chump blocker, you could just rest it and kill it, or He's great just for the resting part, because same reason as Isho, right? You can just starve your opponent out. On curve, you most likely won't have 2 other characters out rested to utilize Newgate, but in the late game could be a thing you could utilize. Enel also in the late game can draw you a card, because on play, if you have 2 or more rested characters, you draw 3, discard 2. But yeah, unlike in the Limb deck, these 2 Odyssey type characters themselves don't come out rested if you're not running Limb. So you do need to have 2 other characters already rested on board. But we do get to that kind of point naturally in a sealed environment. Similarly with Mihawk, you can use it. It's a lot harder out of a Limb deck, but he can untap one of your other 5 cost or lower rested Odyssey type characters to attack again. So you could swing with Enel for 5 Dawn, right? You can attack with them twice for 11k if you play out this Mihawk. But yeah, it does require you to get a lot of the Odyssey type characters, so it's a little inconsistent in that regard. The 5 cost Smoker is an amazing card actually. It's runnable in every deck. So it's a 5 cost 7k with no counter. That's the only downside. But it has Banish, so this is a very like scary effect for your opponent, especially in sealed, because a character that has Banish that deals damage to your opponent, when they take life, it doesn't go to their hand, it just goes straight to the trash. It doesn't trigger either. This is denying them of a card to use against you. And then activate main, you can set it to one of your Dawn is active. If you do this though, no other effects of yours for the rest of the turn can be used to untap your Dawn. So you want to use this as the last untap effect if you have multiple. And this, if you're running the Red Green Smoker, perfectly fits into the 7k threshold you need to be able to use the leader ability to untap 2 Dawn. So you get 3 back essentially. And yeah, with such a low like removal pool available in sealed, more often than not, Smoker will live and then continue to threaten with Banish every turn. So Smoker is definitely like one of the highest priority cards if you can get it. And Senkoku is a vanilla that you could consider running. Zoro might be good, right? On your opponent's turn, if you have 2 or more rested characters. So if you attacked with Zoro and then another character, Zoro becomes an 8k. So he's a lot harder to attack back into, right? He stays on board pretty much. Even though you're only attacking with them for 6k on your turn, it's still a good stat line to attack with. The 5 cost event, the weak don't get to choose how they die, is one of the few sources of removal we have in the set. So on main or on counter, you can kill to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 7 or less. Really inefficient, right? 5 Dawn to kill a 7 cost, but we'll take what we can get. It's flexible in that you can use it on your opponent's turn too. So if your opponent did swing with the character and then you counter to use this event to kill it, the attack fizzles. It doesn't actually hit you, so I guess it's 5 Dawn to stop one attack, essentially. But you're telegraphing it pretty hard if you leave 5 Dawn open. Radio Knife is also another hard removal spell, or event, sorry, wrong game. 4 cost event on main, rest up to one of your opponent's 6 cost lower characters, and then KO one of the rested 5 cost lower characters. Most of the time you'll pick the same target with this, but you can split it, I guess, if you really want to. Right, if they have like a chump blocker that's active and then like a 5 drop that's already rested, you can rest the chump blocker and then KO the rested 5 cost and then swing your leader into the chump blocker. That's one way to use it disjointedly. Trigger is nice too, it rests a 4 cost. And then for the Usopp cards, Cavendish is great, right? It's a 4 cost 6k. When attacking once per turn, you can draw 2 cards and trash a card from your hand. It's not leader lock, so any leader can use this. Card advantage is king in sealed, so you just get to draw cards and filter your hand for useless cards that you don't need, right? You can get rid of them and just keep only the good cards from the 2 cards that you draw from your deck. Kairos is also another great removal tool. 7 cost 9k, so it's this vanilla stat line that you would want to run anyway. Then on play, you can bounce a 5 drop or lower back to its owner's hand. You can even bounce your own characters, but most of the time you'll bounce your opponent's characters. This means that like you develop a body and you remove one of your opponent's bodies. They have to pay down to play it again. So it can be devastating. Hajuden is a nice vanilla, same stat line as the Kairos. And here's that Rebecca we mentioned. So it's basically only viable in an Usopp deck. Because when you play her out and you have an 8 cost or greater character in play, you can draw a card and then reveal 2 7 or lower cost stress roster type characters other than Rebecca from your hand. You can play one as active and the other is rested if it's a 4 cost or lower. But all that to say is that Rebecca is only an 8 cost in an Usopp deck. In every other deck, you need another character out that's already 8 cost. In an Usopp deck, Rebecca fulfills her own requirement. But yeah, that flexibility is what makes her so strong in an Usopp deck. I don't think we even saw an 8 drop on the way down here. So there actually might not be any way to activate this Rebecca outside of an Usopp deck in the set. And then we have Bari Bari Pistol, who is another hard removal event. So it's 5 cost. On main, place up to one of your opponent's characters with 6,000 power or less on the bottom of its owner's deck. So it's a bottom deck effect, but it's by power, which is kind of weird for a blue card. And you do need to combo it with the power reduction card, because it isn't too worth it to just get rid of a vanilla 6k for 5, right? It's really inefficient in that regard. If they're playing like a 4 cost 6k vanilla, you're paying 5 down to kill a 4 cost. So might be a little awkward to use, but there were like power reduction cards that we saw earlier. I'll go over it real quick. So Gum Gum UFO is one way to combo, because this gives minus 4k to something. Monet gives minus 1k to something. We went over that Smiley, they get minus 3k to something, so it's not impossible to use body pistol, but it is a lot worse than the other removal option. Then moving on to purple, I mean Diamante is vanilla. What else is there? Oh, if you do happen to get the Doflamingo and Rosinante combo, this is great too. It's similar to the Caesar Clown and Smiley combo, where if you play Doflamingo and you don -1, you can play out the Rosinante for free. Just based off the value of that, right? It has merit on its own to develop a 9k and a 6k for 8 don. The tertiary effects of the cards don't really factor into a sealed environment too much, right? Doflamingo on your opponent's turn, once per turn, you can rest one of your don and add an active don back. I think that's more like a kind of sugar tailored effect. Then Rosinante, if you have 7 or more don cards, set up to 2 of them as active. So this one might be relevant in sealed, right? You get access to 2 don to play, like that Kamakura Jusoshi we saw earlier, to protect one of your characters with the defensive event counter. And then if you have some events that are bricks in your hand, you can trash it with this Rosinante to replace it with 2 other cards that could be like counter power, right? If you don't have the don to spare to play every event in your hand, just turn it into counter potentially, or maybe even find something to play next turn with it. So I would even run Rosinante on his own, even if you don't get this Doflamingo, who's an SR. Then Buffalo is a vanilla, so you'll run him. Pika could be interesting. He's a 4 cost 5k, and then once per turn, if this character were to be killed by your opponent's effects, you can rest 2 don to save him. So if you have 2 don from this Rosinante up, and then someone tries to KO your Pika via an effect, you can just keep him out. And he's a 5k swing that your opponent has to contend with. And then purple also has a hard removal event in this set as well, 5 costs God Thread. So on main, you KO a 5 cost and then you ramp an active don. So I know I talk crap about body pistol not being too like value efficient, but the fact that God Thread ramps you a don is, I think, relevant, right? If your opponent plays out a 5 drop and it's your 6 don turn, you can just undevelop what they did and then you'll go up to 7, going to 9 next turn. So it does set you ahead. So I think this card is completely worth running. Little Black Bears might be nice too. It's a 3 don event. So it's inefficient in that it's 3 don to counter for 4k, but if you have 7 or more don out and you have 5 or less cards in your hand, you draw a card, right? So it's counter 4 and draw a card for 1 don extra, which I think is worth it, 1 don to draw a card. This is a card you only use in the late game though, because you need to have 7 or more don, but it's not too hard to get to that point in the sealed environment. It's a lot slower. And then as a trigger, you can just ramp an active don too, set you ahead of your opponent, playing bigger characters out before they do. Okay, moving on to black, well, there's San Juan Wolf, who's a vanilla. Shiryu might be nice. You don't get access to his activate main effect because you need a Blackbeard Pirates type leader, but on your opponent's turn, he gets plus 2k power, so he's a 4 cost 7k on your opponent's turn, similar to the Chopper we saw earlier. But Chopper is only a 7k in a Smoker deck. This Shiryu is a 7k in any deck, but he's not a blocker, so you're swinging with them. It's just that it's hard for your opponent to kill him on the clapback, which is really nice, right? 2k is significant. This Jesus Burgess could be nice too, just having access to rush if you're not already running Sanji as a leader, right? If you're running Bonnie or Kid or a Red Green Smoker, Jesus could be nice because for 1 don attached, if you have 8 or more cards in your trash, he gains rush, so he's a 6 cost 7k rush attacker. But again, if you're running Sanji, he turns anything else in your deck into a rush character anyway, so this guy isn't as good in that deck. There's a Vanilla Robin, which you'll probably want to run. This Zoro is only good in Usopp deck because you have the Resurgence Roster type leader or stage, but we don't have access to the stage in this set. But if you do, you can KO one of your opponent's 4 cost lower characters, so it's 4 drop, 6k to KO a 4 drop. That's well worth it. And then yeah, he becomes an attacker the turn after that too. So great card to play out if you do happen to decide to run Usopp. And then we have basically the best removal that we've had in a sealed environment in a very long time. Probably overall the best removal tool in the sealed environment. We have OP10 Liberation. So it's a 6 cost event. What it does on main is if you have 2 or more characters less than your opponent, you can KO up to one of their characters with an original cost of 6 and 4. So you can KO 2 of their characters. If this is like your 7 don turn, your opponent would have gone through their 6 don turn. The turn before that, they would have played a 4 drop as well. You just undid all their developing with this one card. It's an incredible like equalization tool in a 6 don package. I'm surprised this is not leader locked to Blackbeard. Any deck can run it. So if you haven't opened this in your packs, I would definitely consider including it in your deck. Just the fact that it kills 2 things, you can kill a total of 10 costs in stats for 6. That's how crazy this card is. Then moving on to yellow, Inazuma might be worth running because Dawn times 1 when attacking, you can rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost equal to or less than the total of you and your opponent's life cards added together. So on your 4 don turn, you'll play them out or them out, and then the turn after when you swing, most likely at that point, life totals will be like 6 or 7 total. So you'll be able to rest anything at that point that your opponent would have played. And then Uruj is the vanilla that's nice as well. Caribou can be kind of annoying if you're running a Kid deck Because Don times 1 if your leader has a Supernova type and your opponent has 3 or more life cards, this character cannot be killed in battle. So he's just guaranteeing 1 counter out of your opponent's hand, or your opponent might be like encouraged to take life to 2 so that Caribou can be dealt with, which is good for you because you can just deal with the 2 life leader at that point. Cavendish is vanilla that you want to run, and then if you're running a kid deck, you want to run all the Supernovas you can get because they can all become blockers for you, so they're not useless in a sealed environment. Basil Hawkins might be interesting because he's a 4-cost 5k, and then on KO, you trash one of your opponent's life cards, the top one. So that means that your opponent is disincentivized to like deal with the Hawkins because any way to kill him makes your opponent lose a life. This means that you just pump a 5k attack in every turn and then it'll never go away unless your opponent thinks that that life that he loses is worth less than the amount of counter that he'll need to stop this attack every turn. Then we have 8 costs Eustace Captain Kid, so he's a 8 cost 9k, and then you can rest him. Your opponent trashes the top card of their life, so yeah, they just lose that card, no trigger, it doesn't go to their hand. And then end of your turn, if your opponent has 2 or less life cards, you can cycle a card, draw 1, discard 1. So this is a great top end for every deck. It's not leader lock, so you'll want to run it. It'll like quicken a lot of the games if your opponent is running like Bonnie or Kid. They can't stall. Against like the rush Sanjis, it may not be as good because they'll probably rush you down before you can play it out. But in a Kid deck, you can turn this guy into a 9k blocker. Zoro is nice too. If your life total is less than your opponent's, he gains rush, so he's a rush attacker when you're behind. And then Let's Meet in the New World is a 2-cost 4k counter. You need all the defense you can get, so might as well run it. And if you do happen to be at 0 life, you draw an extra card when you're countering with it. And then even yellow has hard removal in this set. 4-cost event, Damn Punked Electromagnetic Cannon. So on main, you can look at the top card of you or your opponent's life cards and then put it back on the top or bottom. Then you KO one of your opponent's characters that costs a 5 or less, so it's 4 costs to KO a 5 cost. That's worth it to me. There's even a 1 cost 3k counter in yellow in this set. We have Room. So on counter, if you have 1 or less life, give it to one of your leaders or characters plus 3k power for the battle, then set it to one of your 5 cost lower characters is active. So yeah, it's only usable when you're at 1 life, but that's most of the times where you want to use these events. But yeah, it's just efficient, right? 1 Dawn for 3k. You can even save one of your 5 costs, or if you block with something, you can untap it to block again. That's something that you can do with Room. Then moving on to the secret rares of the set, you probably want to run both. They're pretty good. So this Luffy is a 6 cost 7k. Once per turn, this character cannot be killed by your opponent's effects. So we saw like every color had like an event that can KO something. This Luffy is a great way to survive 1 KO effect. And then when attacking, you can place 3 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck in any order. If your opponent has 5 or more cards in their hand, they trash a card from their hand. So he's just ripping cards out of your opponent's hand, right? Not only do they have to defend the 7k, but they also have to lose a card to potentially further stop the 7k from going through, from either killing their character or attacking their life. And yeah, since he's sticky enough to survive 1 KO effect, it's great to just have out to threaten your opponent. And then this Law is kind of a conditional card. He's a 7 cost 9k, so even if you want to run him as a vanilla, that's not a bad idea. But yeah, on play, reveal a Supernova type character from your hand and add it to the top of your life face down. Then if your leader has a Supernova type, you can give 1 rested Dawn to your leader. So you do need like another Supernova type card in your hand to heal with it. This is a way to heal. So because it's kind of like restricted to Supernova type cards, it's a little tricky to use. If you do happen to have a lot of the good ones, like you'll run Cavendish anyway, you'll run Bedge anyway because he's a 2k counter. If you're running these cards and you happen to have the Law, it's not out of the realm of possibility that you can just get a free heal with this Law. So I would consider running him too. And most likely we won't get benefit from that second part of the effect where you get arrested Dawn to your leader. Yeah, that's all the cards in OP10 itself. So now the SP cards are cards that you can also run in your sealed deck. Right, these are cards that you can get in your packs. They're like alternate special art cards. So this Flampe, that's a 2k basically. That's all you need to know. So you want to include that in your deck for sure. There's a Rouge who's a blocker, so you're going to include that in your deck for sure. There's Charlotte Pudding who's a 2k, so that's going to be included in your deck. This Sanji is probably a contentious pick. It's 5 cost 6k on play. If you have a cost 6 or greater character in play, you can kill to one of your opponent's 5 cost or less characters. So you do need to have something else already on board that is 6 cost or greater, because he himself is a 5 cost, unfortunately, in sealed in this kind of pre-release environment. But in the late game, it's not unlikely that you're going to have another character out that's 6 cost or greater, so you could get benefit out of just popping a 5 cost for 5. Also, this new gate is removal, right? It's 7 cost 8k power on play. You give it to one of your leaders or characters, 1 rested Dawn. And then you can rest this character and KO a 5k power or less character. So yeah, also a way to just pop something, and then he himself is an 8k attacker afterwards, so worth running in my opinion. And lastly, we have Usopp, like the best 2k counter in the game. So 3 cost 3k power, 2k counter. If you have 8 or more Dawn, rest it to one of your opponent's characters with the cost of 5 or less. So this is a great way to tap your opponent's blockers in the late game to try to go for game. And then if you don't need him for that, he's a 2k counter. So that pretty much covers all the cards that I think stand out in the set that you want to consider. So after you've exhausted all these great picks, you just want to fill your deck out with anything that's at least a 5k power, if it's not a blocker or a 2k counter, right? So like this Brook, stuff like this, where the effects aren't great, but they're like a stat stick you can use at least. But yeah, that's it for the video. I hope this helped you. Hope you do well in your pre-release events. Let me know how you guys do. I like to see when my viewers win their pre-releases and show their winner cards. I see it in the Discord all the time. So yeah, I have faith in you guys. So yeah, bring it home. So hope you enjoy OP10 in a sealed environment. If you're not subscribed already, I would appreciate if you would subscribe and check out my other videos. I post a bunch of gameplay, and then I've been doing a lot of collabs recently. It's my collab era, so check those out too. And I guess that's it. Bye.
Car D Kaizoku.